This rock star entrepreneur is president and co-founder of the second fastest growing private company in America, Quest Nutrition, which grew 57,000% their first 3 years and is responsible for employing over 1,300 people full time. Since then, he's founded the YouTube channel Inside Quest, where he has interviewed industry titans like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, Peter Diamandis, and Simon Sinek. He is also the CEO and host of Impact Theory, his brand new show where he has started off strong by interviewing and tapping into the mindset of elite performers like Super Bowl champ and New York Giants. Shout out to New York, Michael Strahan. Please welcome to Everyday Power TV, Tom Bilyeu. Thank you for being here, Tom.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Great. It is our pleasure. And just to jump right in, I was reading one of your most recent blog posts, and it was about The Matrix. So please tell us, and this ties into your mission. Tell us, Tom, why is The Matrix your favorite movie? And two, what do you mean by you're trying to pull people out of The Matrix?
Well, The Matrix is my favorite movie because it's very entertaining and happens to contain within it some of the most important lessons that anybody can learn about potential, about actuating that potential. And I think it applies directly to business and becoming an entrepreneur. And quite frankly, and this is something that Michael Strahan and I talked about in our episode of Impact Theory, was how it helped him become a better football player. And he actually credits the movie with having such a profound impact on him that it was part of why he ended up becoming an NFL Hall of Famer and setting the record for most sacks in a season. And the general notion of the movie is that once Neo realizes that all the limiting beliefs that he has are made up in his mind, and that the Matrix is basically just computer code and it's based on rules, and those rules can be bent if not broken, that's when he really sets himself free and goes on to do something. So when I say that I'm trying to pull people out of the Matrix, I'm not saying that we actually live in a computer simulation, though we might.
Right. Okay.
I'm talking about, we all pull a web of lies over our own eyes, and that's the limiting beliefs that we all have. I could never do that. I'm not gifted like that. I don't have that talent. Well, okay, it's all right for Michael Strahan, or it's okay for Tim Ferriss, but I just wasn't born with those gifts. And what I'm trying to get people to see is it doesn't matter what you were born with. It doesn't matter where you start. It just matters where you want to go and the price you're willing to pay to get there. And once you get rid of those limiting beliefs and really believe that you're capable of just about anything, truly the extraordinary, that you're thusly free of the Matrix.
So, Tom, I love that. I love that. So, are you saying that, so when you're going through a challenge, because I believe that at every level we're constantly having to recalibrate ourselves and audit ourselves again. So, is it that whenever you're going through some kind of challenge, it's this movie that's your anchor, that's your reference point on how to move forward?
It's even more deep than that for me and ever present. And for me, really what I do is try to remember that I can learn Kung Fu, right? I can learn anything that I set my mind to. And in the movie, it borders on magical because they can, in essence, learn any skill instantaneously.
Right.
And that's the one way that I would say real life is very different from that, in that it's really about the arduous work of gaining those skills. But what the movie puts into entertaining format is this notion of I can't do it right now, but there is a way for me to gain that knowledge. And for me, that's books, books and just a lot of practice.
Right,
and
right.
Once people are willing to engage with that level of self-discipline, working hard, acquiring skills that have utility, and playing the long game. And that's, something that I really, really encourage people to do no matter what you're trying to accomplish. Just play the long game. Know that you may not be able to amass that skill instantaneously, but you can get it. And, you look at somebody like Elon Musk, who's taught himself
Right,
rocket
right,
science,
right.
is, built spaceship, like literally, I can't imagine. And part of the reason I use Elon Musk so often is if you said, hey, name something that just seems outright impossible,
Right.
I would say building a rocket ship and taking us to Mars. Like that's about as hard as it gets for me. And the fact that he's set his sights on doing that without any formal education is spectacular.
I agree. And Tom, you spoke a lot about learning skills. And I agree with you that the only thing that's in the way of where we are and where we want to go is a series of skills. However, learning those skills, Tom, as we know, don't always relate into immediate results. What role would you say that patience plays in all of this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I really hate that word patience.
Okay.
I don't think patience has any place in it. And what I mean by that is when I say play the long game, and there are some amazing, amazing entrepreneurs out there telling people to have patience, and I know what they mean, and they're right. But I think what they really mean is just you've got to go all out
Right.
really hard for a very long time.
Right.
And you can't have patience in the acquisition of skills, but you have to have patience in the usability of that. So if you're expecting something to happen overnight, it's never going to. It's going to take a very long time to really have what you want. But why I think the word patience itself is so counterproductive is it puts people sitting back in a posture of, not relaxing, but of taking a step back. And I think you've got to go at it like all out, all the time, every day, like just really going hard. And when you look at somebody, and I'm not a big sports guy, but hanging over my fireplace, I have a picture of Michael Jordan from the infamous flu game.
Okay. Yes.
Somebody like him, Kobe Bryant, a lot of the like really Michael Strahan, a lot of the greats, they all say the same thing. I worked my ass off and I just put in more work than anybody else. And my results are due to that work. It's not some natural gift that I have. It was just I was willing to outwork other people. So, but you've got to do it for a long period of time.
And so this idea of working your ass off, did you start like that from the jump, or did you think it's compounded effort and it's snowballed, or is somebody just supposed to flip a switch one day when they're inspired by an idea? How did that work for you?
I think that I was so unhappy with who I was, so disappointed in where I felt like my life was going, that I realized the only thing, because I am by nature profoundly lazy, and I actually think most people are, to be really honest with you, as a
Mm-hmm.
species, we're designed to conserve calories. So, from an evolutionary perspective, it was hard to get food. And I think people take that for granted in a world today where, right around the corner you get anything you want. That's not how we came up, not for millennia.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have in us this innate, like if people wonder why they don't want to get out of bed or they don't want to go to the
Right.
gym, because you have an innate drive in you to rest, relax, to conserve energy, because you never know where your next meal is going to come from. So I had to learn to tap into that. I had to learn to overcome my laziness. I had to learn to get my ass out of bed and, really drive towards things. And I've just never been afraid to use self-disappointment, self-loathing, being unhappy, being upset. And instead of demanding of myself some accomplishment, I demanded of myself effort. And I think that was really, really important. And, I know that I put people's teeth on edge a little bit when I talk about using anger directed inward as a really powerful tool.
Right.
But I'm so careful never to demand like, oh, that I win a championship, but
Mm-hmm.
instead that I become capable of a championship performance, or that I never let it damage my self-esteem. And because I don't value myself for accomplishments or intelligence or anything that's sort of I've crossed the finish line,
Mm-hmm.
or an innate ability, I really value myself for hard work and effort and discipline and all the things that I can develop.
Right.
So looking inward and being upset or being frustrated, I don't chalk that up to I am a bad person. I chalk that up to I'm not happy with where I'm at, and I'm going to use that energy to push me forward.
And it sounds like you're also saying, Tom, that you're able to separate yourself from those disappointments and from those missteps and not personalize it and then develop this victim mentality.
It's interesting. So you're yes and no. I never, ever play the victim,
Right.
ever.
Right.
And for me, you're always in control. You could have always done something different. And, I've talked about the meteorite story before. I'll give you a really fast version, which will illustrate how I never, ever, ever play the victim. My wife, let's say that she's British. Let's say she were back home in London in the bedroom that she grew up in. Her mom's home, doors are locked, alarm is on. She is safe and sound. And right at that moment, a meteorite comes screaming through the atmosphere, crashes into her bedroom and kills her. Whose fault is that? Now, when you ask people that, they always say it's fate, divine providence, dumb luck. It's nobody's fault. It just is. For me, I know that's not true. For me, I know it is my fault. Now, how do I know that it's my fault? I know that it's my fault because there actually is a group of people right now that track what are called near-Earth objects. This is all true, by the way. And they're looking for some means to knock those off a collision course with Earth. So whether it's going to be lasers or planted nuclear explosion, whatever, they want to find some way to keep that from happening. Now, I know they exist. I even know where they are. I've never sent them a dime of money. I've never called them to give them encouraging words. I've never sent them an email with ideas, nothing. So, and I think that's right. I think the odds of my wife or anyone that I care about, for that matter, being hit by a meteorite and killed are virtually zero. So spending a lot of time, energy, and resources on that doesn't make sense. But if I end up being wrong, and that actually does happen, I'm not going to waste time playing the victim because I know I could have done something. So I'm not trying to victim shame. I'm only aiming that inwards. I don't expect other people to hold themselves to that standard. I just want to remind myself that I'm always in control. And, being a victim is about being powerless. And I just refuse to play that role. And then the first thing that you said, which now I'm unfortunately forgetting and I will punish myself for, but it isn't, actually, I think I remember now. It isn't that I don't make it personal, because I do. I make it very personal, and I tie it to my sense of identity very, very much. I just never, ever, ever let it damage my self-esteem. And that's where people get into trouble is, let's take body.
Nuance. It's a very powerful distinction.
And it's so critical. And I'll use maybe the most inflammatory, which is body image. To get the physique that I have, I used to be 60 pounds heavier. I grew up in a morbidly obese family. To get the physique that I have, I had to be profoundly dissatisfied with the physique that I had. And I had to be profoundly dissatisfied with the trajectory that I was on to just continue to gain weight. But I knew enough to know that while I'm dissatisfied, and I know that my physique is a result of choices that I've made, having a bad physique does not in any way, shape, or form make me or anyone else a bad person. It just means that I'm not happy with what I have. And I think that we're getting into this weird place in culture where it's not even okay for someone to say about themselves that they're unhappy with their physique. And to me, that's crazy. You should be able to say that you're unhappy with anything in your life and to take steps to change it. But the moment that becomes, I'm a bad person, I'm a less person because I don't have this, or someone else is a bad person or a lesser person, now you've got a problem. Because you're going to diminish yourself, and I never, ever do anything to diminish myself. I'm always trying to increase my performance. But sometimes the thing that increases your performance is massive dissatisfaction with your own performance, with where you're at, with your skill set. Somebody like Michael Jordan doesn't become Michael Jordan by being happy. He becomes Michael Jordan by being so driven to become better, to put in the work, to push through pain, to grind it out, to play when he had the flu, to prove something to himself, to prove something to other people, to prove something to anybody who would stand still long enough to watch that he was capable of the extraordinary. And to me, hell yeah, just don't let it damage your self-esteem.
And I love, Tom, that distinction. It's, as you said, and it's also, to add to that, it's such a soundbite culture as well, that many times these conversations are just not happening, right? And so when we say that, of course, you should love yourself and accept yourself for who you are, it doesn't end there. There's more to it, especially if you know you can do better. And so I love that distinction, and this is, again, why these conversations are so important. I wanted to read a quote that you had on your Twitter, and if you could just dive into that a little bit more, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
You said, the only time belief will take you where you want to go is after you've put in the work. After you put in the work. And most people operate from the opposing standpoint. So could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so belief is critical, and I think people have to have it. And I think that belief is a weird cycle. Which is, you actually have to lead with belief. Even before you have any reason to believe in yourself, you still have to find the way to just believe that, cosmically, that it's possible to do. But believing is nothing. Like, the only thing believing is going to do is allow you to take that first step. And after that, it's just about the work, right? And then when you've actually done the work and you're putting it in and gaining the skill set and all that, you can look back and say, okay, belief is one of the things that got me here. But I think people, and let's talk about the secret for a second. The secret to me is 50% amazing and 50% total BS.
Yes.
And it only stays amazing if you understand that, yes, you need the belief, and yes, putting things out into the world and telling people what you're about will help you make those things real, but they help you make them real because you start taking action, you infect other people with the notion, they start taking action. But at the end of the day, action and execution, that's it. That's all that matters. And that's why, there are insanely gifted people. Tony Robbins actually has a quote, and to me, he was talking about intelligence, but it goes to me to talent as well, which is that you may be very intelligent. Intelligence is important. Talent is important. Mm-hmm. But we all know people who are incredibly talented that can't fight their way out of a wet paper bag.
Right.
And that's because they haven't learned how to execute. They haven't learned how to take the concepts, their ability to process data, or their raw athletic talent, or their singing ability, whatever, and they haven't been able to translate that into the success that they desire for themselves.
Wow. All right. Yes. And speaking of Tony Robbins, and it reminds me of one of my favorite proverbs, old Chinese proverb, and it says, "When you pray, move your feet." Right? When you pray,
move
your feet.
I like that.
Yes, and there's so many people that just stop at the positive thinking.
Mm.
I also love in your interviews, you often use this quote, I choose, and I believe it's actually part of your company culture, I choose to believe anything that will push me forward.
Yeah, that's I really am bullish about this one. So I think that people make a lot of mistakes. So going back to what I was saying about self-esteem, how people get themselves in a trap where they believe things about themselves that diminish who they are, right. Diminish their capabilities because they believe, I could never be that. And that to me is self-defeating. Like, why would you ever believe something that holds you back? It literally doesn't make sense. Even if it's true, right. It doesn't make sense. Right. Now, it doesn't make sense because I have a certain belief about life, which is that the meaning of life is to find out how many skills you can acquire that have utility and then put those skills to use in the service of something bigger than yourself. That to me, that's it. Like, that is the point of life. Now, if you buy into that notion that that's the point of life, then suddenly to believe that you can't do something, to believe that you're not good enough, to believe anything that is detrimental, that hurts your self-esteem, that hurts your willingness to act, like, it just doesn't make sense. So, a great example is Michael Jordan. And the reason he's a great example, he was like cut from the varsity team, basketball team, like something like 5 years, 6 years maybe before he gets drafted into the NBA. Take Stephen Hawking. If you want to talk about somebody that's got every excuse not to have accomplished, he was given a death sentence, told he would only live 2 years. And that was 65, 70 years ago, something, not quite that long, but a long time, 50, 60 years. And, he's continued to not only live, but even though he can only move one muscle in his cheek and his eyes, he's had some of the biggest breakthroughs in modern physics. So it's like, look, we all have excuses. And the worst thing about excuses, they're real. They're completely valid. But you have to decide whether you give in to them. So to me, it's, to believe anything other than I can do what I set my mind to just doesn't make sense.
So speaking of Stephen Hawking's, his PhD dissertation was proving one theory, and his first book, Tom, was actually to disprove his PhD thesis. What are some, and if we're talking about beliefs, what are some beliefs that you've had that you've disproved? And the more specific, the better, because of course, any disempowering belief you have, many other viewers and readers and listeners also have.
Yeah, so here's the truth. I'm not very smart. So I'll give you an example. I will define intelligence as the ability to process data rapidly. So I've met people, they have raw horsepower, and it is unbelievable. And when you see somebody like that can really, really process data, like in a true sort of IQ test way, it's really impressive. And I used to believe that my intelligence was fixed and that I could never make it any better. And because of that, I would apply for jobs and put myself in situations where I was the smartest person in the room because I wanted a reflection back to me that at least in this arena with these people, I am the smartest, and it made me feel smart. And believing that was fixed was driving me down a path of being a lesser version of myself. And once I realized even intelligence was something that was malleable and I could improve it, I then went on a mission to just learn as much as I could, to begin acquiring those skills, to put myself around people who were far smarter than I so that I could learn from them, and then focus on execution. Because look, a certain baseline level of intelligence is useful, but somebody like Richard Branson, he's dyslexic. He scored below average. No, oh God, his IQ isn't very high. I can't remember exactly where it
Right,
falls,
right, right.
but he just believed that he could out execute people and that he understood something about being an entrepreneur, being a great leader, which is to ignite other people and give them a vision and help get the best out of them and moving in the same direction. And, he's built, I think, 8 different companies that have done more than $1 billion in revenue, which is like just unheard of. It's so unbelievable. And so, people like that prove it really isn't about intelligence, first of all. And then second, that even if you start lower than other people, you can build and acquire skills that'll help you either push that to a better place or just overcome it, work around it, whatever the case may be. So, that to me is really everything. And changing that belief changed everything about my life.
And also changing this belief, one, impacted your health, but also I'm sure your business mindset. A lot of people listening and reading this and who will watch and hear this, they're also interested in starting their own entrepreneurial endeavor, but perhaps they're 1, 3, 5, 7 years deep in their 9-to-5 job. And it's one thing to say be an entrepreneur and you're 18 or you're 22. It's a little bit of a different story when you're 30. So what are some things you would say to people who have drive, who are excellent at execution because they do it in the workplace day in and day out, but this mindset of having that courage to actually take that step?
Yeah, so even courage is something that you can develop. And look, if somebody's 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, they need to recognize that saying that it's too late to start their own thing is just an excuse. And again, excuses are valid. That's why they're so sinister, because it really is hard. And yes, it is more difficult to start a business if you have kids and if you don't have kids. It's more risky to start a business if you have a mortgage than if you don't have a mortgage. But here's the reality. And let's get really crazy for a second. Losing your house is not the same as dying.
Right.
Okay, maybe shocking to everybody.
Right.
That you only have one life to live, and being miserable is, to me, just doesn't seem like the way to go about it. And then the hard truth of hard truths is you have time right now that you're allocating to leisure.
Right.
That's got to be the first thing to go, right? So if you want to achieve something, then you're going to have to take some of that leisure time to start the grind, to start something on the side. Like when we started Quest, it's not like we burned the ships at the shore, quit our jobs. Like for a year, my partners were still running our first company, the technology company, while I was off running running Quest. And even I didn't start doing that until we had about 6 months worth of sales behind us, and we knew there was a market, we knew there was something, we had begun to build traction, begun to build an audience. So it doesn't have to be like some crazy high risk venture. You have to be willing to put in the work. And, I think people just use things like I'm 30 or I'm 40 or I'm 50, 60, because it's comforting to think you don't have to change. And you don't, by the way. Not everyone should be an entrepreneur. But yeah, excuses be there.
And Tom, I love how you highlighted this idea of a transition, because right, a lot of the popular dialogue is right the whole burn the boats mentality. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about that transition?
Yeah, so at Quest specifically, we were really cognizant that we had to build a market. We had to test it, see if it was going to work, see if there was an appetite. We didn't know if there was, and also let the market speak to you, right? So I think a lot of times people have a path in their head, and this is something that's so important. There's a difference between never giving up on your goal and never giving up on a path. You should discard a path the second it proves that it's not the most efficient path. That doesn't mean you're giving up on your goal. So, I quit things all the time because it's things that aren't serving my mission. It's things that are not moving me towards my goal. And to not know when to quit or give up on something that's just a path is a real mistake. So, and that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs really, really have to think about. So we knew we have to establish this. We have to see if there's a market. Maybe we're wrong about this protein bar thing, or maybe we're wrong about the flavors or the way that we're marketing or whatever. And just let the market speak to you. And if the market gives you feedback that, hey, this isn't moving, it's not growing, people aren't interested, then change. So, but it's, really holding yourself accountable to metrics is a big deal.
And so your path has led you to again, being the president co-founder of this mega nutrition company, but also of your new YouTube channel, new show, Impact Theory. Can you tell us more about why that is so important to you and what's your goal with that?
Yeah, definitely. So the reason that my partners and I, there's three of us that founded Quest, and admittedly, we founded it for three very different reasons. But for me, it was all about wellness. Wellness for me, I grew up in a morbidly obese family, so there's obviously a physical component to this. But wellness to me has always been a 360-degree endeavor that encompasses the body and the mind.
Right.
And the reason that we started Inside Quest, the show, was I had so transformed my life through changing my mindset that I wanted to pay that forward. I wanted to create something for the employees at Quest. And then, we obviously ended up opening it up to anybody who wanted to, learn about this stuff. And that was a promise that I had made to myself that, I had gone from being sort of crippled by laziness, being afraid that I wasn't smart, to really changing my mindset, gaining skills that had utility, learning about business, applying those skills, getting better, building something. We ended up building a $1 billion brand in less than 5 years.
Incredible.
And it was
Incredible.
over, but we were the overnight success that was like 14 years in the making. So it's really understanding what we had done over here, learning about business, learning about psychology, improving ourselves, that allowed us to execute against that I really wanted to pay forward and help people with. Because when we set out to build the company, for me, it was about helping my mom and my sister be happy. And I just knew that helping them get in shape was part of the necessary process if they were ever going to really be happy. And so now that Quest is running and, has established itself, and I began to see that trying to make Inside Quest, to make the brand flexible enough to accommodate the mental side of a transformation, that it was better to spin it off as its own company. So we spun out the studio, and our mission is to pull people out of the matrix. Right. And the whole idea behind that is mental wellness, first of all, and the second leading cause of death here in the U.S. It's number one in some other countries, including Australia. But the second leading cause of death among young men in America is suicide. So we have this massive problem of depression, anxiety. It's ubiquitous, right. But people don't know how to do anything with it. Right. So not only wanting to do that, but dealing with that problem is just getting people back to baseline, which is not interesting for me. I want to get people to be extraordinary. And what does that world look like when we're able to help people learn how to execute? So our tactical mission, not our sort of spiritual mission is to pull people out of the matrix, but our tactical mission is to incubate companies and content to really help people create a better world. So I believe that commerce is the vehicle by which we're able to make true social change. So that's why we're focused on companies that are all mission-based, that are making the world a better place in a very tactical way. And then content to me is the other side of the narrative. And so really looking at the things that have changed my life, it's movies like The Matrix or comic books like Batman that have had such a massive impact on me. And I believe as a society, for anybody that's read the book The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell, yes. It was utterly transformative for me and changed my life back in my early 20s, even before I'd gotten into business, really forced me to look at life through the lens of mythology, through the lens of ritual, and how important it is and how that's begun to wither and somewhat die in modern society because things are changing so fast. It's really hard to mythologize and essentially impossible to ritualize. Right. So what I wanted to do was say, we're really good at making myths, right? Look at look at Star Wars, look at Batman, look at Iron Man, look at The Matrix, right? All this amazing mythology, but people are incredibly bad at using it. So I watched The Matrix and it changed my life and it took my life on a totally different direction. But how many other millions of people have seen it and it didn't have that impact and it was just entertainment? What we want to do is create a new studio. This is on the content side. Create a new studio that, like Disney, has a mission. And Disney wanted to bring the experience of the magic of childhood to everyone, children, adults, everybody. And what we want to do is show people story after story after story of self-empowerment and how to interpret that in a way that you can go in and be a better business person or a better parent or, a better athlete. Whatever it is you want to execute against, I promise you, there are people out there right now creating those stories that if you know how to interpret them and use them in your everyday life, it will work and it will transform. And so we're living through the entrepreneurial generation right now, and there's lots of podcasts like yours that really have a sincere desire to educate and empower people.
Right.
So we want to create the ultimate lifestyle company that through merchandising, through content creation, is allowing people to reflect that back and get in a virtuous cycle with themselves from an ideological standpoint. And be the sort of mental food, if you will.
Yeah. That is incredible. That is very, very inspiring, Tom. Very inspiring. And I believe you also said, it was either you or one of your guests said how the new term for billionaire is someone who helps a billion people. And, right, and I do believe that we are brothers of the same cause, on the same path, and we're using the internet to hit that billion people.
For sure.
So that is awesome. And who would you say, Tom, impact theory is for?
Wow. So impact theory, and you run the risk if you can't be all things to everybody.
Right.
So, but from a gender age perspective, it's sort of irrelevant to us. I think we skew a little more millennial. But honestly, that's just because we haven't broken people out of that belief system that as you get older, your options are less and less, which is totally false. But we're for anybody that is hell-bent to make something of their lives.
Excellent. So, and I know you're an Uber reader. What would you say? What are you reading right now, Tom? Our readers and viewers love book lists. What are maybe 2 or 3 books that you're reading now or recently read that were truly transformative and powerful?
Yeah, so I have a book list which you can check out on impacttheory.com. It's the 25 most important books in order that I think people should be reading if they're trying to improve their lives. The list skews a little bit entrepreneurial, but that's just because that's what people are writing. Right. But you can apply that stuff to anything: being a better coach, being a better parent, whatever it is you're trying to make happen. And I think that list is right on the money. And it starts with Mindset by Carol Dweck, which to me is the most important book in the English language. Encompasses books like Grit, Linchpin, The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. There's just a lot of really, really powerful books that are designed to give you the ideology that you need to go out and actually acquire skills and actually put it to use. And the book that I'm reading right now, I'm actually rereading The Power of Myth right now by Joseph Campbell, which is just wildly transformative.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And Tom, last question I got to ask. This is something we ask all of our guests here at Everyday Power. Our goal is to make the breaking news of the day about self-improvement and motivational based. We too believe that the news is wrong and that the world is not as hopeless and in despair as people make it seem to be. And contrary to popular belief, you are actually, as you said before, in control of every area of your life. But how would you define everyday power?
Everyday power is understanding the malleability of the brain. And I think when people really break it down to just the neuroanatomy of that thing between your ears and really realize, like, people get it with the body. They get, I can go into the gym and a month from now, if I'm consistent, I'll be able to lift a weight that I can't lift today. But because you can't see what's happening inside your mind, people don't have that same belief. But literally, even just from meditating, you can change the structures of your brain. That's crazy. If you don't know about myelination, look it up. Myelin is the fatty tissue that wraps itself around the connection points for neurons so that you get a faster transit time of the electrical impulses. That's why something gets easier over time the more you do it. They say neurons that fire together, wire together. And that's exactly what they're talking about. The plasticity of the brain, the human ability to learn any skill, to get good at anything through disciplined practice and repetition is unbelievable. And it never stops. So I don't care if you're 90, 110, it doesn't matter. Like, you can change your brain and thusly change what you're capable of. That is everyday power.
Woo! There it is.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Tom, thank you so much. Thank you for all the work you're doing and everything you're done and everything that you'll continue to do. It was an honor to have you on the show. Thank you.
Man, it was an honor to be here, truly. Thank you for connecting. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. We'll be in contact.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right, later.
Take
Bye.
care.